Hello and welcome to India's Eye. US President Donald Trump's troubles seem to be increasing. His former lawyer Michael Cohen has accused him of joining in an apparent conspiracy to violate election laws, and his former campaign chairman Paul Manafort has been convicted of 8 federal felonies and is likely to go to jail. Special counsel Robert Mueller's inquiry into possible collusion between the Trump election campaign and Russia is yet to be completed. No one knows what surprise that report might throw up. There is speculation that the Democrats might want to impeach Trump after the November midterm elections for US Congress. To understand the extent of legal and political problems facing President Donald Trump, we have with us a very distinguished panel of experts. We have with us Ambassador Meera Shankar, a distinguished diplomat. She was India's ambassador to Germany and to the United States. We have with us Ambassador Vivek Karju, another distinguished diplomat. He retired as a secretary from the Ministry of External Affairs and was India's ambassador to Afghanistan, Myanmar and Thailand. And we have with us my old friend, Mr. K.P. Nair, an eminent journalist and strategic analyst. He also served as the diplomatic editor and Washington bureau chief of the Telegraph in Calcutta. Washington was your second home for a long time. So welcome to the discussion, all of you. May I begin with you, Ambassador Meera Shankar. President Trump's lawyer, former lawyer, Michael Cohen, says that he paid hush money to buy the silence of a Playboy playmate and a porn star for the sole purpose of protecting Trump's bid for the highest office. Now, how is this illegal under US election law?
Well, because it was not declared as part of his campaign funds, and secondly, it influenced the outcome of the election. It sought to influence the outcome of the election by suppressing certain information and making payments. Now, there's a third element which has entered, and that is that the payments were routed, the reimbursement of Cohen, who made the payments, were routed through the Trump organization. They made the reimbursements to Michael Cohen, and apparently this might also have been done in a way which involved the creation of fake invoices. So the chief financial officer of the Trump organization, Alan Weisselberg, has also been granted immunity to cooperate with investigators in New York.
So is that why they're saying this is a large undeclared corporate donation indirectly?
Well, whether it's a corporate donation or not, it remains to be seen. It's his own firm, but clearly if they have sought to disguise the payments in some way, which involves fraudulent figures or some cover up, then that would be a felony. See, normally campaign finance violations are not taken very seriously in the US, because somebody can, misstate or whatever, unless the funds are actually misused for personal purposes. But in this case, because it's hush money to silence someone, and because the manner of the payment may have involved a cover up of the payment to disguise it, that it would involve a felony.
Vivek, if Trump's lawyer acted criminally, then how can this not be construed as a criminal act by the then candidate and now President Donald Trump?
I think if there is a linkage which is established by way of a money trail, then clearly this will implicate Trump. In fact, this is the only charge today which can go back to Trump as an illegal, as constituting an illegal act on his part. So if it implicates him legally, then we enter into very difficult territory for him. But there is just one point I would like to make very quickly, that in terms of law, and more than that in terms of politics, we are entering into very new terrain where the old markers need not be guides.
Okay. Do you want to elaborate on that? What do you mean by saying that?
I think maybe the fact is that under US law, the convention is that no sitting president can be criminally indicted. He can be impeached. So it is the House, it is the Congress to which the president is accountable, which has the say on whether an impeachment process can be brought or not.
Yeah.
And the Republicans control both the House and the Senate as of now, and the polls show that Trump's Republican base is still with him.
Yeah. We're going to
so
discuss that.
Politically, it appears that, you know, whatever the legal case,
Yeah.
politically it appears that at this stage, as of now, impeachment is going to be not on the agenda
We'll discuss
before the
impeachment
November
in a bit.
elections.
Quickly, do you want to add something?
You see, there are no guidelines with respect to the legal terrain with regard to a president. There is only a convention, as Meera says. And that convention derives from the fact that neither Congress or that neither the judiciary nor anyone else should have the right to determine whether the electorate's decision to elect a president can be negated. The only process available is impeachment.
But KP, Special Counsel Robert Mueller has apparently assured the White House that he would follow the Supreme Court guideline and not indict a sitting president. That's what the White House claims. Now, if the US Supreme Court's direction that a sitting president cannot be indicted for a criminal act is just a guideline, then is it binding, or can it be adjudicated once you actually say that there is a criminal sitting in the White House?
You are right, it is not a judgment. The last time the Supreme Court came nearest to a judgment was in 1973 on the Nixon issue. And at that time the judiciary stopped short of an indictment by ordering Richard Nixon to surrender the White House tapes. If Nixon had not surrendered the tapes, then it is possible that a precedent would have been set one way or the other, because the Constitution is silent on immunity for a sitting president.
But what if Mueller finds that president has acted criminally and he somehow then resigns, like Nixon did, for example, then can he be prosecuted after he ceases to be president of the United States, or does the criminality also disappear with his demitting office?
No, it appears to me that if there is an indictment, Trump will not be indicted on any of these things that we are talking about, hush money and all. It will be fundamentally on the charge of obstruction of justice. Now, there are two options for Robert Mueller. See, Nixon was also, he was forced to resign on the issue of obstruction of justice. There are two options for Bob Mueller. One is to take a chance and see what the Supreme Court says and indict him. The other option, which I think is more likely, is that he can deliver a sealed indictment on whatever charge, which means that the indictment will remain with the judiciary, and once Trump either finishes his term or he is impeached, once he becomes a private citizen once again, the indictment can be unsealed, and then he will face the music for whatever crime he committed.
Vivek?
I think I don't need to add anything to what KP has said.
Okay. Meera, but do you think Mueller is using the Cohen part is one legal track. The other legal track is the Manafort trial. Now, is Robert Mueller using the Manafort trial and Manafort's links with a pro-Russian political party in Ukraine, from which he received a certain amount of money? Is that to establish a collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians? That your campaign manager is actually taking a fee from a company in Ukraine which is pro-Russia, and therefore is trying to sort of…
Well, he's trying to build his case, step by step. And certainly if there's a campaign manager, what he does is very material.
Yeah.
But as of now, I think the issue is, can there be any direct link to President Trump, which as of now is not there. But the latest news is, because Manafort has been convicted on 8 counts of felony, and then there were other counts, I think almost 12, on which there was no unanimity in the jury. I think one juror held out. And therefore, on those counts, he's, it might come up for retrial. And also the question of his not having declared his that he was a foreign lobbyist, that's another issue which might come up for retrial. And there is now talk that Manafort had been in touch with Mueller about a possible deal, but it fell through because the terms were not satisfactory. So that's something which could be picked up again. I think the issue is really for Mueller, if there's a question of establishing that there was collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russians, then the question is, to what level does it go?
Yeah. Vivek, Manafort is also facing a second set of, a second criminal trial next month in Washington. Not on these charges that Meera mentioned, but 7 other charges have been brought by the special counsel, including obstruction of justice, failure to register as a foreign agent, conspiracy to launder money, etc. Now, if in that trial next month, Manafort, who's Trump's campaign chairman, is convicted as a foreign agent, then would that establish the case that there was collusion with Russia? That your manager, your campaign manager is a foreign agent?
There are 2 separate issues. One is whether the campaign manager can be established as a foreign agent.
That's the trial, that the trial will prove.
That the trial will prove, but the real issue is whether Trump himself was involved in these dealings. That is the crucial issue. In what is the importance of the Cohen revelations, that Trump himself asked him to pay the hush money. So, in all these, in the legal realm, what will be important is tracking it all back to Trump personally.
No, but I thought Mueller's brief was to look for collusion between the Trump campaign, not Trump as such, but Trump campaign and the Russians.
You see, there are 2 separate. That one is political. If you say that the Trump campaign was involved with Russia, that's bad. But the real difficulty will be if the candidate himself had sanctioned all this. Okay. And here normally they always, and especially in America, try to create a distance so that there is deniability.
Okay. KP, is Trump right in saying that Mueller is actually on a fishing expedition in terms of Russian collusion, and that, which of course he denies, but he's going after various other people as a corollary to what was his main task, that he's not looking for Russian collusion, he's looking for other criminal acts.
See, in the choice of words, Trump is technically right, he's splitting hairs, but somebody in Mueller's position, when he is investigating, if he finds other acts of criminality, he is within his rights to pursue that, because he has discovered criminality, you see. And in this case, my feeling is that Trump will eventually be indicted, or in Mueller's report, whatever course he takes, on 3 things. First of all, Trump sacking the FBI chief, because under American law, if you stop a process, a congressional process or any other process, that becomes obstruction of justice. See, Trump is free to sack anybody. I mean, everybody enjoys their office at the pleasure of the president. But if the intention of the sacking is malafide, then you are criminally liable.
But isn't Trump being economical with the truth when he says that, look, he's not going after Russian collusion? After all, because of Mueller's investigation, several Russian individuals have been indicted. This is a case of a Russian spy who's been arrested. Cases of money laundering against Russian entities have come up. So isn't he lying, saying that, look, he's not going after the Russian connection? He has gone after them.
He has indeed, but in the ultimate analysis, see, how do you prove Russian collusion? I mean, American intelligence is convinced that the Russians were involved. But intelligence information is usually very difficult to prove, right? So, I think if Mueller restricts himself to Russian involvement, and produces a report or whatever. It is true that he has indicted Russians again, but then they are not going to be tried because the Russians are not going to hand them over, you see. So, the problem is that if he concentrates only on the Russian involvement, it will be like the proverb, mountain labored and produced a mouse. So, Muller's reputation is also there. So, he is whatever he is discovering, he is making an issue of this.
It is within his mandate. His mandate is not confined to the Russian investigation alone, but any issues arising from it. So, if while going after the Russian in the process of investigating Russia's involvement, if he comes across other manifestations of criminality, then it is his duty to go investigate
but
those.
Specifically on Russians, he's accused certain Russian individuals of stealing US identities, spying inside the US, hacking to upset the US democratic processes, which means Russian interference was there in democratic processes, but now the next stage is to show whether Trump was involved.
Trump's campaign was involved and finally it would be whether all this had the sanction of Trump, the candidate.
Okay. So, Meera, so as you were saying earlier, despite all the setbacks, Trump's approval rating remains well above 40%. Now, could this be used to say by his supporters that look, the president is basically safe from all this because he has this high approval rating and all that we are witnessing is a witch hunt against him?
I think his supporters are saying that, they are convinced that this is a conspiracy to unseat, a conservative agenda, to change a conservative political agenda. But overall, the approval ratings are not, I mean, they are generally more people disapprove of what he has done than approve. And we have to see how the elections go for the House of Representatives, which will be in November. As of now, there are different polls all giving them a lead, giving the Democrats a lead in the elections, somewhat slender, not a very decisive lead, but certainly the Democrats appear to be ahead. So, depending on how the election results pan out, you may see these issues gather more heat or less heat. If the Republicans retain the House, then this issue is, depending on what comes of Mueller's investigations, may not lead to an ultimate impeachment process against President Trump. If the Democrats take the House, then there could be pressure. Though Nancy Pelosi, the Speaker, has basically said, as of now, I don't think we can initiate an impeachment process moving forward.
Why can't they, let me take that question, why can't the Democrats initiate the process? Because you don't know what is going to come first, the Mueller report or the midterm election.
Well,
so could they start the process of impeachment based on whatever indictments have taken place up to now and see how the process goes?
No, they cannot do that because the process has to start with the House Judiciary Committee. And at the moment, the House Judiciary Committee is in the hands of the Republicans. So, the chairman is a Republican, majority of members are Republican. So, since Democrats do not have control of the Judiciary Committee, they cannot initiate. The articles of impeachment have to be drafted by the House Judiciary Committee as the first step, and Democrats are not in a position at the moment to initiate that.
And Republicans would never want to impeach their president.
No, many Republicans do not consider him as their president, I mean the Republican president. They may want to, but they would want to wait and see if the timing is opportune. But I just wanted to briefly add that you refer to the witch hunt. I think the word witch hunt will come back to haunt Trump because under American law, when the presidents ought to be very choosy with the words. He hasn't. So, if he has used witch hunt in terms of Justice Department officials, FBI people, and this can be interpreted legally as intimidation, which is again a form of obstruction of justice.
Vivek, let me ask you this question. Why is it that Democratic leadership, as Meera pointed out, Nancy Pelosi in particular, why are they underplaying the issue of impeachment? I mean, you may not be able to start the process of impeachment, but you could talk about impeachment in the run-up to the congressional election. Is it because they think that if they talk of impeachment, then the Republican voters will consolidate and they may not get the kind of lead they're hoping to get in the House of Representatives?
Partly it is this, but the point I'm trying to make is that Trump's election itself showed that there is a fundamental polarization in America, and that all this process is not impacting on Trump's core vote. And therefore, the question arises that if after all this impeachment, etc., what will be the end result? The end result is a political process, and it is this that Trump is banking on. Hence, I told you that we are in new territory, where the old guidelines, where if there is enormous scandal, if he is found to be acting contrary to law, he resigns. But and there is a smoking gun. In this case, I put it to you that even if there is a smoking gun, Trump's core constituency will not be impacted.
So would you say that Trump's future really is in the hands of the voters, the American voters, and not in the hands of Robert Mueller or the Department of Justice?
Yes, to a considerable extent, because it's only if the Republicans do badly in the November elections that they will feel that Trump is becoming a liability and be prepared to jettison him. As of now, interestingly, it's the Republicans who are talking more about possible impeachment, but as a way to mobilize their base. They are saying if the Democrats take the House in the November elections, then they are going to start an impeachment process against President Trump. Therefore, you need to consolidate and ensure that this doesn't happen. And the Democrats are downplaying it because they think this is a divisive issue. You see, when the Republicans had launched impeachment proceedings against President Clinton, what happened? Of course, not only the House has to initiate it, but the Senate finally has a trial, and there a 2/3 majority of the Senate is required to actually get a conviction, which appears unlikely. And the net result of Clinton, the impeachment process in the House went through. In the Senate, it didn't go through by a 2/3 majority, so it fell through. And then he won the presidential election. So the lesson they are drawing from it is that it's a divisive process. It can also backfire on them unless more solid evidence emerges from Mueller's trial.
Last question, we're running out of time. Now, so from what Meera is saying and what I hear her saying is that even if the Democrats get a majority in the House of Representatives, the Senate, which will essentially acts as a jury, where the person being impeached can bring his lawyers, etc. In the Senate, only 35 seats are going for re-election in November. So if the Democrats don't have a majority in the Senate, but have a majority in the House of Representatives, they may still not go for impeachment.
Yes, but in the Senate, see, in the November election, there is a very high chance, probability that Senate will revert to the Democrats. And depending on the outcome of the November election, and then again the mood in the country, many Republican senators may decide to go along with an impeachment process. I mean, I am sure that if John McCain had been alive, he would have gone along. Jeff Sessions, who is now his appointee, he is a long-time senator, he has turned against Trump. I mean, Trump has forced him to turn against him, and Jeff Sessions, people like Jeff Sessions, Senate is a club, as you very well know, much more than the House. So the role of Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, for example, is very crucial. One can't rule out the possibility that a number of Republicans will turn against Trump in the event of an impeachment and give the Democrats the necessary majority.
So in the yes and no answer.
As of now, the polls are showing a clear edge for the Democrats in the House, but neck and neck in the Senate with 8 seats.
But that's the possibility
with 8 seats as a toss-up.
Yeah.
So, it's still neck and neck. Both Republicans and Democrats in the polls are evenly balanced for the Senate.
Okay, so yes or no answer. In the event of Robert Mueller's report saying that there was collusion with the Trump campaign, the Russians in the Trump campaign, do you think Trump will resign or face impeachment?
I think he'll wait. He's going to ride it out. He'll wait at least till the November election.
No, and after that.
He will, I can tell you, he will not resign.
Okay.
Because his core constituency remains intact and they will prevent him from resigning. He is not the kind who resigns.
No, Trump will not resign. I mean, Bill Clinton did not resign.
Okay. Nixon did.
Nixon
That
did before
is what I was saying.
It was before the impeachment.
The normative
proceedings.
territory is
Exactly. So he wanted to avoid impeachment.
No, Trump will not resign. It is not. He would rather go down as a martyr, somebody who was injured.
But more than that, the normative territory in America has changed, and we should realize that.
But it's not going to remain permanently like that, but let that be.
Well, let's see.
Yeah. So anyway, we have come to the end of this discussion. I would like to thank all of you, Ambassador Vivek Karju, KP Nair, Ambassador Meera Shankar, for participating in this discussion. That is all we have for you today. We'll be back again next week. Until then, goodbye and thanks for watching India's Eye.